He was wearing a $50 hoodie and tired eyes. To the flight crew of Flight 909, he looked like a mistake. To the man in seat 1A, he looked like an intruder. They sneered at him. They skipped him during drink service. They even threatened to have him dragged off the plane in handcuffs for disturbing the peace when he quietly refused to give up the seat he paid for. They thought they held all the cards. But they didn't know that the man they were humiliating wasn't just a passenger. He was the man who had just bought their debt. And by the time the wheels touched the tarmac, their careers weren't just over, they were about to be erased. This is the story of Damon King, and the flight that changed everything. The air in the first-class lounge at JFK always smelled the same expensive cologne, stale espresso, and the distinct, metallic scent of exclusion. Damon King stood near the entrance, adjusting the strap of his worn canvas messenger bag. He didn't look like he belonged here. He knew it. More importantly, the woman at the reception desk knew it. She was blonde, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, her name tag reading Sarah in polite. Serif font. She was currently looking past Damon to beam at a tall, silver-haired man in a bespoke suit behind him. "Welcome back. Mr. Pellington," she cooed, her voice dripping with practiced warmth. "Seat 1A, as always. Right this way." Damon didn't move. He stood his ground, a calm island in a stream of rushing luxury. "Excuse me," Damon said, his voice deep and steady. "I believe I was next." Sarah's eyes snapped to him, her smile vanishing instantly, replaced by the tight-lipped expression reserved for lost tourists and cleaning staff. "Sir, this is the first-class check-in. Economy and business are down the hall. To your left." "I know," Damon said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his boarding pass. He didn't shove it in her face. He placed it gently on the marble counter. "I'm on the 909 to London. Seat 1F. Sarah looked at the ticket, then at Damon's hoodie. It was charcoal grey, unbranded, slightly frayed at the cuffs. She looked at his sneakers, comfortable runners. Not Italian leather. She let out a short, sharp exhale through her nose. "I'll need to see your ID and the credit card used to book this," she said loudly. The lounge went quiet. A few heads turned. "Is there a problem?" "Mr. Pellington asked from behind Damon. He checked his Rolex. "Some of us have schedules. Sarah." "Just a security verification. Mr. Pellington, this ticket was flagged." She lied. She didn't type anything. She just stared at Damon, waiting for him to crack, waiting for the outburst that would justify calling security. Damon produced his passport and a heavy, matte black titanium card. He slid them over. Sarah picked up the card. Her eyebrows twitched. The Centurion. The real one. Not the platinum marketing gimmick, but the invite-only tier that required spending millions annually. She ran it. It cleared instantly. She didn't apologize. She didn't smile. She shoved the documents back across the marble. "Boarding in 20 minutes. Try not to block the aisle." Damon took his things. "Thank you." "Sarah," he said, reading her name tag intentionally. He walked past her, feeling Pellington's eyes boring into his back. "Unbelievable," Pellington muttered loud enough for Damon to hear. "They just let anyone in these days. Diversity quotas are ruining the ambience." Damon didn't turn around. He walked to the window, looking out at the massive Boeing 777 being prepped on the tarmac. He pulled out his phone and opened a secure messaging app. He typed a single line to a contact saved only as Legal Gibson, Initiate Phase 4, I'm on board. Confirm the transfer time. The reply came 3 seconds later. Transfer completes at 1400 GMT. Mid-flight. You sure about this? Damon, it's a bloodbath. Damon looked back at Sarah, who was laughing obsequiously at Pellington's joke. I'm sure. Let it burn. Boarding was chaos, but first class was supposed to be the sanctuary. Damon was the first to board, thanks to his status, though the gate agent had checked his boarding pass 3 times, holding it up to the light as if looking for a forgery. He settled into seat 1F. It was a suite, really. Sliding doors, a lie-flat bed, a massive screen. He stowed his canvas bag and sat down, pulling a pair of noise-cancelling headphones over his ears. He wasn't interested in the champagne. He just wanted to sleep. He had been awake for 72 hours straight, closing the deal that was currently sitting in digital limbo, waiting for the final signature. He closed his eyes. Excuse me. A tap on his shoulder. Sharp, insistent. Damon slid the headphones down. Standing over him was a flight attendant he hadn't seen yet. Male, perfectly groomed, with a smile that looked like a bear trap. His name tag read Gavin. Sir, I'm afraid there's been a duplicate booking error, Gavin said. His tone wasn't apologetic. It was authoritative. I'm going to need you to move to seat 4D. Damon looked at the cabin layout. Seat 4D was still business class, but it was right by the galley and the lavatory. It wasn't a suite. It was a high-traffic zone. I booked 1F specifically, Damon said calmly. I have the confirmation. Yes. Well, the system shows a conflict, Gavin said, his voice rising slightly. And we have a priority passenger who needs this suite. Mr. Pellington is a global services member. Ah. Pellington. Damon looked across the aisle. Pellington was standing there, looking impatient, holding a tumbler of scotch that he had been served before he even sat down. Look, son, Pellington said, stepping forward. I always sit in row 1. It's a superstition. I have a merger in London. I need the rest. You look like you're capable of handling a little noise in the back. Be a good lad and move. A superstition? Damon repeated. It's policy to accommodate our highest-tier flyers, Gavin interjected, stepping closer, invading Damon's personal space. If you move now, I can offer you a voucher for $50 off your next flight. $50. Damon's company, Kingston Tech, had grossed $4 billion last quarter. I'm not moving, Damon said. He put his headphones back on. Gavin reached out and pulled the headphones off Damon's head. The cabin went deadly silent. Damon looked at the headphones in Gavin's hand, then up at Gavin's face. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Even Pellington looked slightly taken aback by the physical contact. You touched me, Damon said. His voice dropped an octave. It wasn't loud, but it carried a vibration that rattled the glass on Pellington's tray table. You are failing to comply with crew instructions, Gavin snapped, panic and adrenaline mixing in his voice. He dropped the headphones onto Damon's lap as if they were hot. This is a federal offense. If you do not vacate this seat immediately, I will have the pilot turn this plane around, and you will be escorted off by federal marshals. For sitting in the seat I paid $12,000 for, Damon asked. For being disruptive, Gavin shouted. You are aggressive. You are scaring the other passengers. Damon looked around. A young woman in 2A looked terrified, but she was looking at Gavin, not Damon. Pellington, however, smirked. He's being quite aggressive. Gavin, Pellington lied smoothly. I feel threatened. I think he might have a weapon in that bag. It looks suspicious. Gavin nodded, seizing the lifeline. That's it. I'm calling the captain. Gavin marched to the cockpit phone at the front of the cabin. He picked it up, staring daggers at Damon while he whispered urgently into the receiver. Damon didn't move. He didn't argue. He picked up his phone. The time was 13:45 Greenwich Mean Time, 15 minutes until the transfer. He opened his email. He found the contact for the CEO of the airline, Royal Stratos Airways. The man's name was Richard Smith. Damon didn't email him. Instead, he texted Gibson again. They're threatening to arrest me, accusing me of being armed. Pellington is involved. Gavin is the lead FA. Gibson's reply was instant. Do not engage. Let them dig the hole. The acquisition just cleared final regulatory hurdles. We are waiting on the timestamp. 14 minutes. Gavin slammed the phone down and turned back to Damon. He had a look of triumphant malice. The captain is alerting ground control. We are pushing back now, but police will be waiting for you in London. You're going to spend your trip in a holding cell. Now, for the safety of this flight, I am ordering you to move to the back of the plane. Economy. Row 45. Now. You said 4D a minute ago, Damon observed. That was a courtesy. You lost it. Move, or I will have the co-pilot come out here and restrain you with zip ties. Damon stood up. Pellington chuckled. Smart choice, boy. Know your place. Damon looked Pellington dead in the eye. I know exactly where my place is. Arthur, do you know where yours is? Excuse me. Pellington bristled. I'll move, Damon said to Gavin. I don't want to delay the flight for these good people. I'll sit in 45. He grabbed his bag. He walked past Pellington, past the terrified woman in 2A, past the smirking Gavin. As he walked down the narrow aisle of the plane, passing through the curtain from first to business, and then from business to economy, he felt the eyes of every passenger on him. He saw the whispers. Must be a criminal. Drunk. Crazy. He found row 45. It was the last row, right against the toilets. The seat didn't recline. Damon sat down, squeezing his long legs into the cramped space. The smell of the lavatory was already potent. He checked his watch. 13:58 Greenwich Mean Time. He looked out the tiny, scratched window as the engines roared to life. 2 minutes, he thought. Enjoy your champagne, Arthur. Enjoy your power trip, Gavin. Because when we land, I'm not just going to fire you. I'm going to make sure you never work in the sky again. The plane lurched forward. Damon King smiled for the first time that day. The first hour in row 45 was a study in physical and psychological endurance. The seat did not recline. The wall of the rear lavatory prevented it. Every time someone flushed the toilet, a roar of pneumatic suction vibrated through Damon's spine, followed by the waft of blue chemical sanitizer and human waste. Damon sat with his knees pressed against the hard plastic shell of the seat in front of him. He was a tall man, 6'3", and he had to contort his body at an angle just to fit. The irony wasn't lost on him. He owned the debt of the company flying this plane. Technically, he owned the seat in front of him, the seat he was sitting in, and the uniform of the man who had banished him here. Next to him, in seat 45B, was a young woman with pink hair and a terrified expression. She was clutching a worn backpack and looked like she was trying to make herself disappear. "I'm sorry," she whispered, about 40 minutes into the flight. "I know it's tight. I'm trying not to use the armrest." Damon looked at her. Her name was Charlotte, according to the luggage tag on her bag. She looked like she expected him to yell at her. The narrative Gavin had spun that Damon was aggressive and dangerous had clearly filtered back here. "Use the armrest," Damon said gently. "It's yours. I'm fine." She blinked, surprised by his calm. "But the flight attendant said that you attacked someone." "The flight attendant," Damon said, looking down the long, dim tunnel of the cabin, "is confused about a great many things." At that moment, the meal service cart rattled down the aisle. It was being pushed by a different flight attendant, a woman named Bailey who looked exhausted. When she reached row 45, she smiled at Charlotte and handed her a foil-wrapped tray of pasta. Then she looked at Damon. Her face fell. She checked a piece of paper on top of the cart. "Mr. King?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Yes. I've been instructed by the purser. Gavin, that due to your status as a security risk, I cannot serve you a hot meal. We are not allowed to provide you with cutlery or potential projectiles." Damon stared at the foil tray in her hand. "I see. So I'm to starve for 7 hours. I can offer you a bag of pretzels," she whispered, looking around to make sure Gavin wasn't watching. "And water. I'm really sorry, sir. I'm just doing what I was told. He said if I served you, he'd write me up for insubordination." Damon looked at Bailey. He saw the fear in her eyes. She wasn't the enemy. She was just another cog in the machine that Gavin was currently driving off a cliff. "It's okay, Bailey," Damon said. "Give me the water. I don't want you to lose your job." "Yet," he added silently. She handed him a small bottle of lukewarm water and a tiny packet of pretzels. "Thank you for being understanding," she breathed, then hurried away. Damon opened the water. He checked his watch. 14:05 GMT. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He connected to the onboard Wi-Fi. It cost $24.99 for the flight. He paid for it with the same Black Centurion card that Sarah had sneered at. The internet connected. His phone instantly flooded with notifications, emails, texts, Slack messages, but he only looked for one. Subject transfer, complete from Gibson. Legal to Damon King Damon. It's done. The wire hit the escrow. The board signed off at 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. You are officially the majority shareholder of Stratos Global Holdings. The press release goes out in 3 hours. "Do you want us to hold it?" Damon typed a reply. "Hold the press release. I want to make the announcement personally. Send the digital ownership credentials to my phone and get me the direct line for the Chief of Operations at Heathrow. Now." He sat back, the vibrations of the toilet flush rattling his teeth. He opened the airline's internal organizational chart, which Gibson had attached. He found Gavin's name. Gavin Miller. Senior Purser, 8 years of service. He found the pilot's name. Captain Anthony Hatcher. He scrolled higher. He found the VP of Customer Experience. He found the Regional Director for the UK. Damon began to type. He didn't type fast. He typed with the precision of a sniper adjusting a scope. He drafted an email to the Chief of Operations at Heathrow, copying the global CEO, Richard Smith. Subject security incident on Flight 909/immediate runway protocol, Mr. Smith. I am currently a passenger on Flight 909 to London. Seat 45C. I am writing to inform you that there will be a significant restructuring of the in-flight crew upon arrival. Furthermore, I am requesting that airport police and your station manager meet the aircraft at the gate. Not to arrest a passenger, but to facilitate an immediate corporate handover. Attached is the proof of purchase for your airline. I expect the stairs to be brought to the plane. Do not use the jet bridge. I want the crew to walk down to the tarmac. We have business to discuss outside. Regards, Damon King, CEO, Kingston Tech owner, Royal Stratos Airways. He hit send. 10 minutes later, the Wi-Fi on the plane cut out. Damon smiled. They had likely rebooted the system from the ground, or the sheer volume of panic traffic hitting the cockpit's satellite link had jammed it. Up in first class, Gavin was likely pouring another scotch for Pellington, laughing about the thug in the back. Pellington was likely stretching out his legs, thinking about his merger. Damon ate a pretzel. It was dry, salty, and tasted like victory. The descent into London. Heathrow was bumpy. Rain lashed against the small oval window next to Charlotte, blurring the grey sprawl of the city below. "I hate landings," Charlotte said, gripping her backpack straps. "It'll be smooth once we're down," Damon assured her. "The pilot is experienced, even if he is about to have the worst day of his life." "What, nothing," Damon said. "Just hold on." The tires slammed onto the runway, screeching as the reverse thrusters roared. The plane shuddered, slowed, and began the long taxi to Terminal 5. Usually, the fasten seatbelt sign would ding off once they reached the gate. But today, the plane stopped short of the terminal building. They were out on the hard stand, parked in a remote area of the tarmac. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. It sounded strained, unusually high-pitched. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Hatcher. We have been directed by ground control to a remote stand for a security check. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Police will be boarding the aircraft shortly." A murmur of panic rippled through the economy cabin. People craned their necks. "Is this because of you?" Charlotte whispered, eyes wide. "Yes," Damon said calmly. He unbuckled his seatbelt. "Sir, sit down." Gavin was storming down the aisle from the front, marching all the way to row 45. He looked gleeful. He was practically vibrating with the anticipation of seeing Damon humiliated. "You hear that?" Gavin hissed, leaning over the seats, loud enough for the surrounding rows to hear. "That's for you. The police are here. I hope you enjoyed the pretzels, because that's the last meal you're having as a free man. You really went all out, didn't you?" Gavin Damon said, standing up. He towered over the flight attendant in the cramped aisle, calling the police, diverting the plane to a remote stand. Lots of drama. "You threatened the safety of this flight," Gavin spat. "Sit down." The front door of the plane opened. The sound of rain and wind hissed into the cabin. Heavy boots thudded on the floorboards. "Police!" a voice shouted. "Everyone stay seated." 4 officers in high-visibility jackets marched down the aisle. Behind them was a man in a sharp black trench coat, holding a tablet. He looked terrified. This was the station manager, a man named Simon. Gavin turned to the police, pointing a shaking finger at Damon. "They're row 45. That's him. That's the aggressor. He assaulted me. He threatened a Global Services member." The lead police officer, a burly sergeant, looked at Gavin. Then he looked at Damon. He walked right past Gavin, brushing him aside with his shoulder. The sergeant stopped in front of Damon. He didn't pull out handcuffs. He didn't reach for his baton. He stood at attention and nodded. "Mr. King." "That's me," Damon said. "I'm Sergeant Miller, Heathrow Airport Police. We received the call from headquarters. We've secured the area." The sergeant stepped aside, gesturing to the man in the trench coat. Simon, the station manager, looked like he was about to vomit. He stepped forward, water dripping from his coat. "Mr. King, he stammered. On behalf of Royal Stratos, I am mortified. I only received the communique from New York 10 minutes ago. Gavin's jaw dropped. Simon, what are you doing? Arrest him. He's dangerous. Simon spun around, his face turning a violent shade of red. Shut up, Gavin, he roared. The entire cabin went silent. One more word out of you and I'll strip that uniform off you right here. Simon turned back to Damon, his demeanor instantly shifting back to subservience. Sir, your car is waiting on the tarmac. We have the stairs ready. Please, allow us to escort you off first. Damon stepped out into the aisle. He adjusted his hoodie. He looked at Charlotte, who was staring at him with her mouth open. Nice meeting you, Charlotte, Damon said. Check your email later. I'm going to send you a voucher, a real one, not $50. Damon began to walk up the aisle. The sea of passengers parted. The whispers changed from criminal to who is he. He reached the front of the economy section. He walked through business. He reached first class. Mr. Pellington was standing up, looking confused. He had his carry-on bag in hand. What is going on? Why are the police here? Why is he leaving first? Damon stopped. He stood right in front of seat 1A. Hello, Arthur, Damon said. You're being arrested, Pellington asked, though he sounded unsure now. No, Damon said. I'm being expedited. It's a perk of ownership. Ownership. Pellington scoffed. Ownership of what? A landscaping company. Damon leaned in close. Of the plane, Arthur, and the airline, and the lounge you insulted me in. Pellington went pale. Officer, Damon said, turning to the sergeant, I want this man, Mr. Pellington, escorted off the plane last, after every single economy passenger has deplaned. He can wait. Understood, sir, the sergeant said. You can't do that. Pellington spluttered. I'm Global Services. I'm cancelling that program tomorrow, Damon said over his shoulder. He turned to Gavin, who had followed them to the front, looking like a ghost. Gavin, Damon said softly, get your coat and get the rest of the crew. Meet me on the tarmac, under the wing. Now. Damon King walked out of the plane door into the cold London rain and down the stairs. A black Range Rover was waiting, engines running. But he didn't get in. He stood by the landing gear, crossed his arms, and waited for his employees to come down for their performance review. The rain at Heathrow is cold, but the chill the flight crew felt as they descended the metal stairs had nothing to do with the weather. They came down in a single file line. Captain Hatcher first, looking grim, his hat tucked under his arm. The first officer, then the cabin crew. Gavin was last. He was walking slowly, his legs stiff, like a man walking to the gallows. They assembled in a semicircle under the shelter of the massive Boeing 777 wing. The roar of other planes taking off nearby was deafening. But under the wing, there was a strange, acoustic pocket of silence. Damon stood leaning against the bumper of the Range Rover. Next to him stood Simon, the station manager, who was holding an umbrella over Damon's head. Damon gently pushed the umbrella away. He wanted to look them in the eye without obstruction. Captain, Damon said. Captain Hatcher stepped forward. Sir, I want to state for the record that I was acting on the information provided to me by my chief purser. I was told there was a violent passenger. You're the captain, Anthony, Damon said. You're the god of the sky when those doors close. You didn't come back to check. You didn't ask a single question before calling for police intervention. Hatcher swallowed. I followed protocol. Protocol, Damon repeated. He looked at the line of flight attendants. He saw Bailey, the one who had given him water. She was crying silently. "Bailey, step forward," Damon said. Bailey took a shaky step. She looked like she was about to faint. "I'm sorry, sir. I'm so sorry." "For what?" Damon asked. "You were the only person on that metal tube who treated me like a human being. You broke the rules to give me water." Damon turned to Simon. "Simon, what's the position above senior purser? Is it in-flight service director?" "Yes, sir," Simon said, checking his tablet. "It's a management role, ground-based, usually, or training oversight." "Give it to Bailey," Damon said. "Effective immediately. Double her salary." Bailey gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. The other flight attendants looked at her in shock. "Thank you. Oh my God, thank you," she sobbed. "Go inside. Bailey, get out of the rain," Damon said. She hurried to the crew bus, still weeping. Now, only the men remained, the captain, the first officer, and Gavin. Damon walked over to Gavin. Gavin was shaking. Rain was dripping off his nose. The arrogance, the sneer, the power, it was all gone. He looked small. "Mr. King," Gavin started, his voice cracking. I made a mistake. I misjudged the situation. I thought." "You didn't think," Damon cut him off. "You judged. You saw a hoodie and you saw skin color, and you decided I wasn't worth the air I was breathing. You decided that Mr. Pellington, a man who hasn't generated a net profit for his own company in 3 years, by the way, was worth more than me." "I was just trying to protect the first-class experience," Gavin pleaded. "It's my job. Your job is hospitality," Damon said. "Your job is service. What you did up there wasn't service. It was bullying, and you enjoyed it. I saw your face. Gavin, you liked pulling those headphones off my head. You liked the power." Damon reached into his messenger bag. He pulled out the headphones. "You touched me," Damon said, echoing his words from the plane. "You put your hands on a passenger. I... "Simon," Damon said, not looking away from Gavin. "Does Royal Stratos have a no-tolerance policy for physical assault on passengers?" "Yes, sir. Strict liability," Simon confirmed. "And what is the penalty?" "Immediate termination and blacklisting from the industry," Simon said. Gavin's knees buckled. He actually grabbed the landing gear strut to hold himself up. "Please, I have a mortgage. Please." "You have a mortgage?" Damon asked. "I had a ticket. I had a seat. You didn't care about what I had." Damon turned to the captain. "Captain Hatcher, you're suspended pending an investigation into your judgment. I want to know why you trust a man like this blindly." Hatcher nodded, pale-faced. "Understood, sir." "And Gavin?" Damon stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that cut through the wind. "You're not just fired. I'm going to make sure that every time a prospective employer Googles your name, the first thing they see is the lawsuit I'm filing against you personally for assault and defamation. You won't be serving peanuts on a bus, let alone a plane." "Sir, please," Gavin cried out, tears mixing with the rain. "Get him out of my sight," Damon said, turning around and opening the car door. Simon signaled to 2 security guards who had been waiting. They stepped forward and took Gavin by the arms. He was wailing now, a broken sound that echoed across the wet tarmac. Damon climbed into the back of the Range Rover. The leather was warm. It smelled of safety. "Where to, Mr. King?" the driver asked. "The headquarters," Damon said. "I have a board meeting." And then, "Take me to a hotel. I need a shower." As the car pulled away, Damon looked out the back window. He saw the police boarding the plane again to deal with Pellington. He saw Gavin being led away. He didn't smile. It wasn't funny. It was just balance. The scales had tipped, and gravity had done the rest. But the work wasn't done. The airline was rotten, from the lounge to the cockpit. And tomorrow, the cleaning would truly begin. The headquarters of Royal Stratos Airways was a glass monolith rising out of the wet London pavement. A few miles from the airport, it was a building designed to intimidate. All sharp angles and cold, blue lighting. Damon King didn't look intimidated. He walked through the sliding glass doors of the lobby at 4 p.m., his hoodie slightly damp, his sneakers squeaking on the polished granite floor. Security guards stepped forward, 2 of them, wearing blazers that cost more than Damon's entire outfit. "Sir, the building is in lockdown," the lead guard said, hand raised. "We have a board meeting in progress. No unauthorized personnel." Damon didn't stop walking. He didn't even slow down. He held up his phone, displaying a digital QR code that glowed with a distinct, pulsing red border. It was the master access key, sent to him by Gibson 10 minutes ago. The guard's scanner beeped before he could even protest. The turnstile clicked open. "I'm authorized," Damon said. Pushing through, "I'm the agenda." He took the executive elevator to the 40th floor. The silence in the lift was heavy. He watched the numbers climb 10, 20, 30. Each floor represented layers of management that had allowed a culture of elitism to rot the airline from the inside out. When the doors opened on the 40th floor, the atmosphere was chaotic. Secretaries were running between offices with stacks of paper. Phones were ringing off the hook. The news of the tarmac incident had leaked. TMZ had a blurry photo of police cars surrounding the plane. Damon walked straight to the double oak doors at the end of the hall, the boardroom. He didn't knock. He pushed the doors open. Inside, 20 people sat around a massive table made of reclaimed mahogany. At the head of the table stood Richard Smith, the CEO. Smith was a man who looked like he had been manufactured, not born. Perfect tan, perfect teeth, perfect suit. He was currently shouting at a speakerphone, "I don't care what the PR team says. Spin it! Say the passenger was drunk. Say he was a security threat. We cannot have the stock tank, because some." Smith stopped. He saw Damon standing in the doorway. The room went silent. The only sound was the rain lashing against the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Who the hell are you?" Smith demanded, his face flushing. "Security." "Security, let me in," Damon said, walking into the room. He tossed his canvas bag onto the empty chair at the opposite end of the table, the chairman's seat. "And I advise you not to finish that sentence about the drunk passenger. It might complicate your severance package." Smith blinked. He looked at Damon's hoodie. Then he looked at the face. He recognized it. Not from the passenger manifest, but from the front page of TechCrunch 3 years ago, when Kingston Tech revolutionized quantum processing. "Damon King," Smith whispered. The color drained from his face so fast it looked painful. "Richard," Damon nodded. "You were just talking about spinning the story, lying to the press, blaming the victim. Is that standard operating procedure here, or is that just a special service for the shareholders?" "Mr. King," Smith stammered, smoothing his tie. We were just briefed on the situation. A misunderstanding. A rogue crew member. We are handling it. A rogue crew member." Damon laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. Gavin wasn't rogue. Richard, Gavin was a product. He was doing exactly what you trained him to do. Prioritize the high-value targets. Ignore the rest. Treat the contract of carriage like a suggestion. Damon pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. It was wet from the rain. "This is the transcript of the call you made to the captain while we were in the air," Damon said. Smith froze. "You told him to divert to the remote stand." Damon read. "You told him, and I quote, 'Make a show of it. Scare him. We need to set a precedent that disruptors won't be tolerated.'" The board members gasped. They looked at Smith. That is privileged communication," Smith shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "You hacked our servers. That's illegal." "I didn't hack anything," Damon said calmly. "I own the servers. Richard, I bought the debt at 9 o'clock a.m. I bought the equity at 1 o'clock p.m. And as of 10 minutes ago, I am the sole owner of Royal Stratos Airways." Damon looked around the table. "Gentlemen, ladies, you are all fired." Pandemonium broke out. Chairs scraped back. Shouts of protest filled the room. "You can't do that," the CFO yelled. "We have contracts. We have tenure." "I can, and I did," Damon said, his voice cutting through the noise like a knife. "Your golden parachute's gone. I found the clause in your bylaws regarding gross negligence and reputational damage. Covering up the assault of a passenger, me qualifies. You're leaving with nothing but your personal effects." Damon turned back to Smith. "Richard, you have 5 minutes to clear your desk. Security will escort you out. And if you try to take a single hard drive, a single file, or even a stapler, I will have you prosecuted for corporate theft." Smith slumped into his chair. He looked small, defeated. "Why," he whispered, "why destroy it all? It was just one seat." "It wasn't about the seat," Damon said, leaning over the table, his eyes burning. "It was about the dignity. You forgot that you're in the business of moving people, not cargo. You forgot that every person on those planes has a story, a life, and a reason for flying. You treated me like a line item, so I treated you like a liability." Damon pointed to the door. "Get out." Smith stood up. He walked out of the room. A broken man. The rest of the board followed, shuffling out in silence, leaving Damon alone in the massive room. Damon walked to the window. He looked out at the rainy London skyline. He took out his phone and dialed Gibson. "It's done," Damon said. "The board is gone. Smith is out." "What now?" Gibson asked. "Who runs the airline?" "I do," Damon said. "For now. Get Bailey on the phone and find that girl, Charlotte. I have a job for her, too." The fallout wasn't a ripple. It was a tsunami. In the digital age, 3 weeks is an eternity. But for the former elite of Royal Stratos Airways, it was a slow-motion car crash that they were forced to watch on repeat. It started with the video. A passenger in seat 2A. The terrified young woman who had watched Gavin bully Damon hadn't just been watching. She had been recording. She had caught everything: the sneer, the snatching of the headphones, the threat of arrest. And finally, the arrival of the police, who walked past the criminal to arrest the accuser. She uploaded it to TikTok with the caption, "Billionaire CEO ignored in first class. Watch what happens when he buys the airline mid-flight." Within 4 hours, it had 12 million views. By the next morning, it was the lead story on CNN, BBC, and Al Jazeera. The hashtag Seat1F was trending globally. becoming a symbol of silent power against loud prejudice. Arthur Pellington sat in the plush boardroom of Smith Hess, the investment firm in London, where he was supposed to sign the merger of the decade. He was sweating. The air conditioning was on full blast, but he felt like he was roasting. Across the table, the Japanese delegation, conservative, honorable, and extremely thorough, was whispering. They were looking at a tablet. "Mr. Pellington," the lead negotiator said, sliding the tablet across the polished wood. "Is this you?" On the screen was the video. It was paused at the exact moment Pellington had called Damon boy and smirked about diversity quotas. That is taken out of context," Pellington stammered, his hands shaking. "It was a stressful flight. The man was aggressive. I was protecting the cabin." "The man," the negotiator said, his voice ice cold, "is Damon King. We do business with Kingston Tech. We respect Mr. King immensely. And this video shows a man who lacks judgment, character, and basic humanity." The negotiator stood up. The rest of the delegation followed suit. "We cannot merge with a liability," he said. "The deal is dead." "You can't do this," Pellington shouted, standing up. "My stock is leveraged on this deal. If you walk away, I'm ruined." "You ruined yourself, Mr. Pellington. Good day." They walked out. 2 hours later, Pellington's personal phone rang. It wasn't his broker, it was a process server. Damon King wasn't just firing employees, he was suing Pellington for the tortious interference of the flight operations. Damon was claiming the cost of the fuel, the landing fees, the crew overtime, and the reputational damage to the airline. The lawsuit was for $4.2 million. Pellington, whose assets were tied up in the now-collapsed merger, filed for personal bankruptcy the following Tuesday, the last anyone saw of him. He was arguing with a valet over a parking fee he couldn't afford. If Pellington's fall was financial, Gavin Miller's was existential. Gavin had returned to his apartment in Leeds, hoping to lay low. He thought he could just wait it out. He thought he could apply to another airline, maybe a budget carrier, and start over. He was wrong. Damon King had kept his word. The lawsuit for assault and defamation was public record, but it was the industry blacklist that truly suffocated him. Gavin sat at his kitchen table, staring at his laptop. It was raining outside, a grey, miserable drizzle that matched his mood. He had just finished a video interview for a position as a customer service rep for a train company. It was a humiliating step down, but he needed the money. The interview had gone well. Then his phone pinged. An email. "Dear Mr. Miller, regarding your application during our standard background check, we encountered a do not hire flag associated with your profile in the Global Transport HR database. The flag cites gross misconduct involving passenger safety and assault. Due to the severity of this flag, we cannot proceed with your application. Please do not reapply." Gavin slammed the laptop shut. He put his head in his hands. He had sent out 50 applications, 50 rejections. He was toxic. He wasn't just unemployed. He was unemployable, desperate. He drove to the airport, not to fly, but to beg. He found Simon, the station manager who had taken his badge that day. Simon was standing outside the terminal, smoking a cigarette. "Simon," Gavin pleaded, walking up to him. "You have to help me. I can't get a job. Any job. I'll clean the toilets. I'll load bags. Please, call HR. Tell them to lift the flag." Simon looked at Gavin. He didn't look angry anymore. He just looked pitying. "I can't. Gavin," Simon said. Mr. King personally oversees the blocked list. He reviews it every week. He's vindictive, Gavin cried. He's a monster. Is he? Simon asked quietly. Or is he just holding a mirror up to you? You tried to have him arrested. Gavin, you tried to ruin his life because you didn't like his hoodie. You wanted to put him in a cage. Now you're in one. It's just karma. Simon dropped his cigarette and crushed it under his heel. Go home. Gavin, there's nothing for you here. While the old guard burned, new shoots were growing in the scorched earth. The headquarters of Royal Stratos had changed. The executive floor, once a silent mausoleum of white privilege, was now buzzing with energy. The doors were open. There was music playing softly in the hallways. Bailey Vance sat in the corner office. The nameplate on her desk read, Bailey Vance, VP of In-Flight Experience. She was looking at a fabric swatch for the new uniforms. No more stiff, military-style blazers. The new look was modern, comfortable, and inclusive. Her assistant knocked on the door. Bailey, the regional managers are ready for the strategy call. Bailey took a deep breath. 3 weeks ago, she was afraid to give a passenger a pretzel. Now, she was in charge of the entire passenger experience for a global airline. She clicked the video link. 12 faces appeared on the screen, mostly older men who had survived the purge. They looked skeptical. Good morning, Bailey said, her voice steady. Let's get straight to it. I've reviewed the complaint logs for the last 5 years. I'm seeing a pattern. We have 30% more security calls on passengers of color than any other demographic. Why? One of the managers, a man named Clive from the Manchester branch, cleared his throat. Well, Bailey, statistically, certain routes are more rowdy. It's a socio-economic issue. Bailey didn't blink. Is it, Clive? Or is it bias because I've flown those routes? I've seen businessmen in suits scream at flight attendants and get a free drink to calm down. And I've seen students in hoodies get threatened with federal prison for asking for water. Clive went silent. We are implementing a new training module, Bailey announced. It's called Empathy First, and it's not optional. If you fail the assessment, you don't fly. If your station has disproportionate security calls, you will be audited. And if I find out that anyone, and I mean anyone, is judging a passenger by their appearance, they will be gone before the plane lands. Am I clear? Crystal? Ms. Vance? Clive muttered. Good. Bailey smiled. It was a smile that reminded everyone of Damon King. Let's get to work. Charlotte was sitting in the library of her university, staring at a withdrawal form. She couldn't afford the next semester. Her part-time job at the cafe wasn't covering rent, let alone tuition. She was going to have to drop out, move back home, and give up her degree in graphic design. She picked up her pen to sign the paper. Her phone buzzed. It was an email. Subject Scholarship Award. She frowned. She hadn't applied for any new scholarships. She opened it. Dear Charlotte, you may not remember the man in seat 45C, but he remembers you. He remembers that when the world was telling you to be afraid of him, you offered him your armrest. Royal Stratos Airways is launching the Kingston Design Initiative. We need a new logo, a new brand identity. We want to hire you as a freelance consultant to help design it. Attached is a retainer check for $50,000. This is an advance on your tuition and living expenses. We believe in your vision. Sincerely, Damon King. Charlotte dropped the pen. She stared at the screen. the numbers blurring through her tears. She didn't sign the withdrawal form. She ripped it in half. A month after the incident, a black car pulled up to the curb at JFK Terminal 4. Damon King stepped out. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing the same charcoal hoodie, the same jeans, the same sneakers. He walked into the terminal. The air felt different. The tension that used to hang over the check-in counters, the anxiety of the passengers, the haughtiness of the staff was gone. He approached the first-class counter. The agent was a new hire, a young man named Evan. He looked at Damon. He didn't sneer. He didn't ask for a return ticket. "Good afternoon, sir," Evan said brightly. "Flying to London today." "I am," Damon said. "Checking in for King." Evan typed the name. His eyes widened. He looked up, then back at the screen. Mr. King the owner." "Just a passenger today, Evan," Damon said, putting a finger to his lips. "How's the job treating you?" It's amazing, actually," Evan said, relaxing. "The new policies are great. We're actually allowed to help people now. We don't have to follow those rigid scripts. It feels human." "That's good to hear," Damon said. "Sir, I have you in seat 1A. The suite is prepped." Damon looked around the terminal. He saw an elderly woman sitting on her suitcase near the economy line. She looked exhausted. She was rubbing her swollen ankles. "Evan," Damon said. "See that lady over there?" "Mrs. Higgins." "Yes, she's on the standby list for an upgrade, but she's bronze tier." "Upgrade her," Damon said. "Put her in 1A. Tell her it's a computer glitch. But, sir, where will you sit? Is 45C open?" Evan smiled. He understood. "Yes, sir, it's open. Put me there." Damon took his boarding pass economy, Zone 5, and walked toward security. He walked past the lounge. Sarah, the receptionist who had started this entire chain of events, was no longer there. She had been replaced by a digital kiosk and a concierge who was currently helping a family with a crying baby. Damon boarded the plane, last. As he walked down the aisle, he noticed the changes. The curtain separating classes was pulled back, not shut. The flight attendants were smiling, actually engaging with people. He reached row 45. It was still cramped. The lavatory still hummed, but the vibe was different. He sat down next to a teenager wearing headphones, blasting hip-hop. The kid looked at Damon. "Sup," the kid said. "Sup." Damon nodded. A flight attendant appeared. It was Bailey. She was flying this route personally to oversee the new crew. She saw Damon in the back row. She didn't make a scene. She didn't announce his presence. She just walked over, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Mr. King," she whispered. "We have a full flight today." "I see that," Damon said. "Everyone happy?" "They are," she said. "We got rid of the plastic cutlery in economy. By the way, everyone gets silverware now. Dignity in the details." "Right. Dignity in the details," Damon agreed. "Can I get you anything?" Damon looked at the seat pocket in front of him. "Just some water, Bailey. And maybe a bag of those pretzels. I hear they're better when you own the company that makes them." Bailey laughed, a genuine, joyful sound that seemed to lift the cabin pressure. "Coming right up." She walked away, and Damon leaned his head back against the hard seat. He closed his eyes. He had spent $4 billion. He had fired a board of directors. He had sued a billionaire into bankruptcy. He had rewritten the rules of an entire industry. And he had never been more comfortable than he was right now, in the worst seat on the plane, The engines roared to life. The plane began to move. Damon King smiled. He wasn't just flying to London. He was flying in a direction that had never been on the map before. Forward. Damon King didn't just buy a plane. He bought a lesson that the world desperately needed to learn. He showed us that status is nothing more than a label. But class, true class, is about how you treat the people who can do absolutely nothing for you. He stripped the arrogant of their power and gave the powerless a pair of wings. The reality is, we encounter Gavins and Pellingtons every single day. They're at our jobs, in our schools, and maybe even in our own families. But stories like this remind us that the wheel always turns. Karma might be slow, but she is thorough. If you believe that everyone deserves a seat at the table, or at least a little respect in row 45, then you need to help us spread this message. Smash that like button until it breaks. Share this video with someone who needs to see the underdog win. And subscribe right now, because we are just getting started. The next story is even crazier, and you do not want to miss the boarding call. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.